Hey, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Caitlin, your geeky girlfriend, and it's time. We are going to rank every five-star book that I have read up to this point being May, what is today? The 27th, 2024. And every book that I've ever rated 5 stars. Now, this will include young adult and adult fiction as well as nonfiction books. Any book that has been rated 5 stars in my Goodreads. Now, to be fair, I'm sure there are some books throughout my life that I have really, really enjoyed and just have not yet ranked 5 stars. And as always, Remy is making a guest appearance. As you can see, he loves to be in these videos. So, but as I was saying, I'm sure that there are some 5 star books that I have read that I just have not put in Goodreads. But this is everything that's from my Goodreads and is relatively recent, like recent up to the point of like, I would say probably, let's be real, the last 15 years. Okay. So most of what is in my Goodreads is pretty accurate to 5 star reads or not. So, if you're new here, I'm Caitlin, your geek girlfriend, and this is a bookie channel, and I also do movie reviews on my channel, and my latest video, which was my mid-year movie review wrap-up, contains every movie that I've watched in the past 7 or 8 months, and I gave it a score, and we ranked it, and all those things. And now, we are going to do all the 5 star books together. So, what we're going to do is we are going to take all of the books that I've rated 5 stars. There are quite a few, and we're going to rank them. A tier is this book is on the top, like my top 10 or, top 15 or whatever. These are the best of the best. These are the books that I recommend to other people. These are the books that I loved almost every page of. I loved the story of, whatever. These are the best of the best. B tier is like, it was good at the time, and I rated it 5 stars at the time, but since then, there have been other books that have kind of overshadowed it, and it's not something that I would recommend to others or like have on my list of like, these are must reads in your life. And then C, these are going to be the bottom tier. Honestly, looking back now, I don't really remember what it was about this book that made it 5 stars. I either don't remember the book at all, don't remember the plot or the characters at all, and I don't really know why I gave it 5 stars. So the C tier are books that definitely are not in the forefront of my memory anymore, but those B tiers, I distinctly remember pieces and parts of reading them, and I enjoyed them at the time, but they're not ones that like I can remember all the plot and all the characters and would say like is the best book of all time. So without further ado, let's get into it. And if you like this content, make sure you hit that red button and subscribe for more, and go check out all of the Bookie Babe book reviews that are already in my channel. I recently uploaded one about Kristen Hanna's new novel, The Women, about the women and the nurses in the Vietnam War. And it was very interesting, a great historical fiction work. And it was a newer book released here in 2024. So make sure you check that out and all of my other book reviews in this channel. Okay, here we go. We're going to start off. Hopefully you guys, let me see. You guys should be able to see the books. You can see most of them. There are some down behind me that you won't be able to see until I move them, but that is all right. All right, we're going to start off strong here. We're going to start off with Verity. I talk about this book all the time. It is definitely in the top 10. It is a psychological thriller. Really got me interested in the adult genre, number one, introduced me to Colleen Hoover, number two, and got me interested in the thriller genre. I had read like some young adult thrillers before this. I'm particularly thinking of like the One of Us is Lying series by Karen McNamara. I had read that before Verity. But for those of you who don't know, and if you have not yet watched my Bookie Babe book review of Verity, I actually did 2 reviews of this book because I did one blind react right after I finished it, and then I did an actual full review. And I picked this book up off the shelf at Walmart because I had heard a lot of things about it. It was kind of a book talk, Instagram, really trendy at the time. Picked it up, and I honestly couldn't put it down even at Walmart. I read like 3 or 4 chapters just sitting in line for Walmart waiting for my photos to be done, and I knew it had to come home with me. And that's kind of the story of how I stumbled upon Verity, but I read it essentially in one sitting. Now, I did not actually read it in one sitting. I read, like I read like the first 30 pages the first day, read into the 100, almost 100 page. Like that took me a couple times to get from like page 30 to page 90. So I read like 30 pages every day or so for a few days, but then I literally read from page 99 all the way to the end of the book in one sitting because I just simply could not put it down. I had to know how it ended, and it read super fast. And if you have not yet read Verity and you're a Colleen Hoover fan, I would say definitely read Verity. If you've never read anything by Colleen Hoover, this is a great one to start with, but note that her other ones just do not stack up. And you'll notice that there aren't any other Colleen Hoover books on this list. So, sorry, Colleen. There's just not. None of them have like lived up to this one. And this was a great one for me to start with. And I have read, I think I'm up to now 3 of her books, and they just don't even compare. So that's Verity, definitely in the top 10 books. I recommend it to everybody. I have given it to all of my friends and family to read. Like, it is definitely A tier. Moving on, Good Girls, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, the sequel, Good Girl, Bad Blood. I read this one this year, actually, in January, so this is a very fresh read for me. This is one of the only ones on the list that comes from 2023, or 2024, excuse me. This is another one, like, really, really fast read, and at the time, I really, really enjoyed it. However, I think looking at the grand scheme of all the books that are on the list, I think I have to put it in B tier, simply because it was great at the time, but the other 2 in the series, like, the whole series doesn't hold up, and especially the third one, it really, like, the third one kind of ruined the series for me, and I talked all about that. Like, I have reviewed this book as well, and the third one, Good Girl Gone Bad, and the third book in this series, like, or Good Girl, Bad Blood, excuse me. This is Good Girl. No, this one's Good Girl, Bad Blood. The third one's Good Girl Gone Bad, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, this, like I said, I have to put this in B tier because, it just does not, like, at the time when I rated it, and I would say as a book standing alone, it definitely deserves its 5-star rating. And I tell you all about that in my review, which you can find here in the channel if you scroll down. But like I said, looking at some of the other ones on this list, and like when I think about my top favorite books of all time, this one I don't think makes the cut, but it still is a great book, if that makes sense. And like, it is the best one in that series by far. Before we get any further, I would like to mention that in the description of this video, I actually tagged another content creator who I got this idea from, and I watched her video of her doing this exact same thing, and so I have tagged her in the description of the video. So thank you for your inspiration, and keep making your great content. All right, moving on. Our first non-fiction title, Real Food for Pregnancy. Now, this is another one that I kind of stumbled upon, came across it on Pinterest when I was just doing my casual pinning here and there. But I learned so much from this book. So it is going up in A tier as well, because I learned a lot about nutrition, a lot about how the body stores different nutrients. Like, there's a lot of science in this book, and I don't normally get into science and dietetics and all that, and nutrition science, but this, like, really showed me how poor nutrition in the United States is, and like really motivated me to kind of look at nutrition differently, and not in a way of like, oh my gosh, you have to eat healthy and diet culture and all that. It's genuinely like, you can eat fatty foods and nourish your body appropriately. Like, it like praises butter and oil, olive oil, and like avocado, those healthy fats, and it praises ice cream and like even things with sugar. Praises like it pretty much makes the point that everything is good in moderation, and except for, of course, like cigarettes and illegal drugs, of course, put that out there. But yes, this is definitely an A tier book. I recommend this to anybody who is working on conception, is pregnant. Like, there's just so much to learn from this book, and I feel like it's not something that can be like diced politically. It's like very factual, very statistical, and it just is like, this is a way to nourish your body. So great, A tier. All right, moving on. Never Cried Wolf. This book is actually written by a friend of mine. I'm actually mentioned in the acknowledgments, which is super cool and fun. And I would, this is hard. I gave it 5 stars at the time. I think it deserves that 5-star rating. But I think overall, I have to put it in B tier simply because, again, like if we're trying to narrow down my top 10 favorite books of all time, this one's probably not going to make the cut. And not because it's not good, just because there are others that kind of overshadow it. And I don't think that's a negative thing. This book is a fiction novel, and it kind of deals with like how rumors are spread in high school. It's kind of like this revenge story told from the perspective of two different friends. They're both a dual perspective novel. I got to read the beta version of it, and it was great then. And I rated the beta version even 5 stars. And so this one does have some changes, and it is, like I said, it's very good. I think looking at the grand scheme, I don't think it's going to fit into that A tier, but maybe we'll come back to it and move it up. Maybe we'll put it like here in between. Like it's almost good enough for A tier, but like I don't know if it's going to be good enough for A tier. That makes sense. So yeah, I highly recommend it. You can find it on Amazon. And like I said, yours truly is mentioned in the acknowledgments as being a beta reader, which was so cool and such a fun experience. And there's actually another Brianna Ray Quinn novel on this list. So we'll get to that in a second. Moving on, Charlotte's Web. I told you there was some young adult stuff in here. This is obviously a children's novel, but I do think that it stands the test of time. And simply because of the fact that it is now banned, I definitely think it deserves its 5-star rating. And I'm honestly tempted to put it in A tier simply because it's now a banned book, and I am completely against book banning. I think people should be able to read and get their you should be able to read whatever you want. And I don't think that literature and books should be banned. I kind of think that you're putting a ban on literacy at that point. And I just don't think that's a wise choice. So I'm very against book banning. It's on my list to own every book that's ever been banned. Because I just think literacy is that important. So simply for the fact that Charlotte's Web is now a banned book and they don't read it in school anymore, I just think that's ludicrous. And the reason they don't read it in schools anymore is because Charlotte dies in the end. If you've seen the movie, you know that Charlotte dies in the end. She's a spider, for crying out loud. She doesn't have a long lifespan anyway. And people don't want to address the difficult issue of Wilbur's grief, and it's ridiculous. So simply for that fact, I kind of want to put it in A tier. However, looking at some of the books, if we were looking at children's novels that would be in the A tier, like The Mouse and the Motorcycle, which I don't even think is on this list. I think I left that one off accidentally. That one definitely, The Mouse and the Motorcycle definitely goes in A tier for me. And there are a couple of other ones that are children's books that I think, I don't know if it's A tier or if it's just A tier because it's banned and I'm passionate about it. I think it has to go in B. I think we're going to put it in B tier. You can disagree with me in the comments, but I think we have to put it in B tier. I might regret that decision, but like I said, I think if we think about all the books that are on here, we're kind of trying to narrow this list down to a top 10, and I just think that Charlotte's Web, while it's a very good book, I think that everybody should read it. I do think it deserves its 5-star rating. I think there are other books that are going to just kind of squeak it out of that top 10. All right, I was a non-blonde cheerleader. This one is going to go into C tier. Now, when I read it, I loved this book. I was a non-blonde cheerleader, and I think that's why I picked it up in the library all those years ago. This book actually has 3, if not 4, subsequent novels that come after it, and I remember reading this series and enjoying it, but I don't know why I gave it 5 stars. I think if I were to read this book now and rate it, it would not get the 5-star rating, and so that one for me definitely goes in C tier, but I think if you're a cheerleader, it's just a fun series to read, if you can even find it anymore. This is a very old series. All right, Conceal Don't Feel. This is a Twisted Tale, the Frozen one. This one goes comfortably in B tier. I really enjoyed it when I read it, but it just does not hold up against the other titles in the list, plain and simple. And so it comfortably goes in B tier. Like, I know why I gave it 5 stars. I'm a big Frozen fan, especially, like, I love both the first and the second Frozen. And this has a really good story to it, and kind of a really good alternate perspective. And so I know why I rated it 5 stars. It just is not, it's definitely not in the top 10. All right, the other Brianna Ray Quinn book is Fake It Till You Make It. This one also goes in B tier. Because, like I said, the main reason I rated this book 5 stars was because of the speed at which I read it. And I literally read this book in like 3 days, and I loved the print size. It was really easy for me to read. And I do relate to Violet a little bit in the sense that, like, I was the virgin in high school, that everybody was kind of like, oh, you're the virgin, blah, blah, blah. So, like, I got her sense of peer pressure. But there are elements and themes in this book that I like didn't totally love, and I didn't totally love the direction the book ended up going. And so for that reason, like, I probably would, like, if I was rating this book now with the scale that I currently rate books at, it probably would have gotten a 4. But because of how fast I read it, that's what made it a 5 star. So it's a good book, and both of her books are very well written, great young adult novels. But actually, you know what? I think I have to move this one down into C tier simply because, and I'm going to comfortably put Never Cried Wolf in the B tier. I moved Fake It Till You Make It down because I should not have given it 5 stars. And I feel like it's more of a 4-star book. Not a bad 4-star book. And like, but the reason I gave it 5 stars was because of how fast I read it. Yeah. All right, moving on. We've got 3 Lemony Snicket books here. Lemony Snicket, the series of unfortunate events, is probably my favorite young adult series that I've ever read. I have read all of I've read the complete collection of the Lemony Snicket series of unfortunate events. And don't get me wrong, like, there are some of these titles that I absolutely despised, but there are some that I absolutely loved. So my top 3 made the cut for the 5 stars. And right away, we're going to put the Ersatz Elevator in C tier because I probably would not, like, going back, like, at the time when I was reading them, the Ersatz Elevator was the best out of the 6 that had been written. But then moving forward, we got the Hostel Hospital, which was, like, leaps and bounds better than the Ersatz Elevator. And then closer to the end, we got the Grim Grotto, which is my favorite of the whole series. So Ersatz Elevator definitely is in C tier because looking back now and reflecting on the whole series, the Ersatz Elevator definitely is not as good as these other 2 titles, the Hostel Hospital and the Grim Grotto. Now, the question is, do I feel that the Grim Grotto is a 5-star book? I don't think so. So we're going to put the Hostel Hospital and the Grim Grotto both in B tier. Now, that's not to say that they're not great books. I totally believe, like, I love this series, and I kid you not, I found the complete collection of the series of unfortunate events at a Half Price Books about a month ago. They were selling the entire collection hardcover for $89.99. And to tell you all that I was so tempted to buy it, I was so tempted. Like, I almost bought it just because I love this series so much. This series is great. They're like little mysteries. Count Olaf is a great, like, villainous character. And it's so fun to read throughout the entire series and kind of see his schemes and how he pops up later on. And yes, obviously, you know, they progress with the reader. So as the Baudelaire children get older, the readers naturally get a little bit older as well. And so it becomes easier to kind of figure out. But the bad beginning, like, Count Olaf is just this sinister guardian. And then the fact that he, like, followed, like, you realize as an adult or an older young adult reading them, like, how much of a creep he really is. And that makes it all the creepier. And there's, like, creepy crawlies in them, like, just a lot of really good, like, there's just a lot of really good writing in these books. And I love Lemony Snicket and I love this whole series. But again, and, like, the Grim Grotto might end up sneaking its way back into A tier. We'll see at the end how many we end up with. The Grim Grotto might end up there. Because it is my favorite of the entire series. And the Hostel Hospital is, like, really creep. Like, the Hostel Hospital takes the creep factor up a notch. And it's like, these books are kind of like American Horror Story for young adults. So if that's your vibe, I highly recommend the series of unfortunate events. And honestly, the Netflix series, with Max Greenfield and Patrick Warburton was actually decent as well. And there's a movie that's based on the first three books, which I think is hilarious, and I actually own it on Blu-ray because it's like so nostalgic to me. But a lot of people gave it crap, so if you've never read them, I highly recommend just trying one, especially if you're into young adult books or children's books. They're just fun. But like I said, the Grim Grotto might end up making its way into A tier. We'll see. We'll see where we end up. Okay, the next one, It's Not Okay, turning heartbreak into happily, I think it's happily never after, I think. Happily never after by Andy Dorfman. A background on this book, Andy Dorfman was a contestant on The Bachelorette, but she started as a contestant on The Bachelor. She was on Juan Pablo's season, and famously and notoriously walked out on her own accord before Juan Pablo could give her a rose or send her home. She just said she didn't like him and left. This is her side of the story. So this is how she was casted in The Bachelor, how she became The Bachelorette, her relationship with Josh, and everything thereafter. And I think it's just very eye-opening, especially if you like The Bachelor. This is just kind of a peek behind the curtain type of book, but it also is a very powerful, feminist anthem for being single and being okay with that. And honestly, I have recommended this book to other people. I'm going to put it in A tier, and that might be shocking, but I think that it just proves that, every woman should be single for a period of time in her life, and that is okay, and there's nothing wrong with being single, and there's nothing wrong with being single later in life, and I think that it is just really, really powerful. And I loved the peek behind the curtain stuff. I love all that, that celebrity gossip and drama and all that. So I actually am going to put that book in A tier, which kind of surprises me. But now, remembering it, I am remembering how much I liked it. And so yeah, it's going in A tier and it's a nonfiction book. And like I said, I've recommended it to other people. Oh, you should, if you get through, especially if you're going through a heartbreak, this is a really good book to read. The next ones are all very, very good. And it's going to be hard to really decide. But starting off, P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han. This is the second book in the All the Boys I've Loved Before series. This one goes in, honestly, this one probably goes in C tier. I don't remember anything about this book or why I gave it 5 stars. I just remember the series as a whole. And I remember I liked the series, but I can't remember anything specific about this book and to why I gave it 5 stars. Now, I do recommend the series. I think it's very well written. It's a very good, rom-com-y, young adult romance, and very fun. And the movies are good as well. The movies are on Netflix. So if you want, a nice, summery, light read that's young adult romance, I highly recommend this series. And Jenny Han is a good writer. But I don't remember anything about this book or why I gave it 5 stars. So C tier. Someone Like You by Sarah Dessen. This is the book that made me a Sarah Dessen fan. I still remember it to this day. I read it literally in one day as a 7th or 8th grader, and it changed my life. This is the book that really got me back into reading. In middle school, I had kind of taken a hiatus. I was having a hard time finding a book that I really liked. My mom bought me this book because she thought I would like it. She saw it on the shelf at Target or something, was like, oh, this sounds like something you would like. And it was. And from then on, I have read every single Sarah Dessen book since. Anytime somebody asks me for a book recommendation, this is the book that I tell them. Pretty much the premise is it's about 2 best friends. The one gets pregnant. The other one has to deal with losing her best friend to this new life, and they're high schoolers. So her best friend is dealing with being a pregnant high schooler and the teen pregnancy stuff and figuring out what she's going to do with the baby. And there's just a lot of emotion. It's a lot of powerful emotion, a lot of real feelings for high schoolers. And honestly, I don't know if any of Sarah Dessen's works have ever been as good as this one. This one is the standout by far. I don't think it was her first one. I think it kind of falls, it's the second or third novel that she wrote, but it stands out. And unfortunately, I let someone borrow this book many, many years ago, and they never gave it back to me. And it broke my heart because this is a book that I wanted my daughters to read and everything. So I get a little emotional thinking about this book because it's just so good. And I wanted to be able to share it with everybody. And yeah, so this one by far A tier. This is definitely in the top 10 of my favorite books that I've ever read in my life. And Sarah Dessen is my favorite author because of this book. All right, now moving on to One of Us is Lying. Again, this is one that I actually have already mentioned, but this one has to go in B tier because I kind of get it and its sequel confused now looking back. At the time, though, I really, really liked it. It gave me Breakfast Club vibes. It gave me Pretty Little Liars vibes. It gave me like a little bit of Gossip Girl-y, so like all the teen drama angst stuff mixed in with some like murder mystery stuff and like 80s movie clickiness. But like it's definitely still a good book. And I'm excited to read the third one, but I don't remember. I just remember liking it, but I don't remember like that much about the plot. So I'm not going to put it in C tier because I feel like I really liked it a lot when I read it. But I don't, maybe it should go like in between B and C because I do remember really, really liking it, but I don't remember enough about it to tell you why I really, really liked it. I just know that I did, and I bought the sequel when it came out and read it, and they were fast reads. I just don't remember necessarily, it's not like the plot is like ingrained in my brain like Verity and some of the other ones. And then we have Number the Stars. This one also goes in B tier. This is a great book. It's historical fiction. It's young adult. And it is about a little girl growing up during World War II in Nazi Germany. And she has a story similar to that of Anne Frank, but like her family gets displaced. The Nazis come and look for them. But it is very powerful. And I read it as a college kid, and it was like a young adult book. And we were learning, I took a class about like children's books and how to choose books for classes. And we talked about like why this would be a good book, and just talking about like learning about different perspectives, learning about different periods of time, the history, and like reading from the perspective of a youth living through these tragedies. Yeah, so B tier, like definitely not, oh yeah, best of the best, but still a great read. Okay, moving on to the next set. And there's clearly, as you can see, not as many on this one. I'm going to be interested to see which ones get in that A tier because we might not even have a full top 10. And like I said, there are some that I missed, like Mouse on the Motorcycle. I did not include in this presentation, for lack of a better word. And it definitely is A tier for me. The mouse's name is Ralph. My grandfather's name was Ralph. I love Beverly Cleary, and that was my favorite Beverly Cleary book growing up, and I still distinctly remember like lots of pieces of that plot. So The Mouse on the Motorcycle is definitely in the top 10 books that I've read in my life, and it's another like young adult. All right, starting off, Where the Red Fern Grows. Now, for my generation, this was the Old Yeller. Like, we read this in 5th grade. It was the saddest book I had ever read up into that point. I still vividly remember the book. However, I like did not like it's a 5-star book in that it is very well written and it like provokes a lot of emotion. However, I have to put it in B tier because it was so sad. So sad. And like, and I'm sure Old Yeller is the same way. Like, you loved it and it was so good, but you wish it wasn't as sad. Speaking of sad books, I'm actually going to jump over here to these two titles right here. The Fault in Our Stars by John Green is definitely in A tier. It is like another sad book. Now, I will say, I actually was more sad reading Where the Red Fern Grows than I was reading The Fault in Our Stars. I think partially because I kind of knew what to expect with The Fault in Our Stars because my mom read it first and I saw her like crying during it and I knew it was going to be sad. So the whole time I was reading it, I kind of was just ready for this sad. So I didn't feel the emotion that I did when reading Where the Red Fern Grows. Like, I knew nothing what to expect when reading The Red Fern Grows. I do, like I said, I do distinctly remember the book, but I have to put it in B tier because I would not recommend this book to other people because it's so sad. Now, The Fault in Our Stars is a little bit different. I think I think it is a very well written book. I really like John Green. You'll see another title pop up of his here in a little bit, but this is the book that got me interested in John Green and kind of sent me down his rabbit hole of works. And I think the movie is very well adapted to the book. And I think this is a great, very pivotal young adult novel. I think it's one of those ones that everybody should read. Where the Red Fern Grows possibly is in the banned book list as well, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But I have not heard like anybody talk about this book in a really, really long time. But yeah, The Fault in Our Stars is very sad, but if you've seen the movie, you know what to expect. I do recommend reading the book. I think the book is just very well done. And they did adapt the book to the movie very well. And another sad banned book is The Bridge to Terabithia. This one also goes in A tier for me because I still distinctly remember reading this book. I think I was in 3rd or 4th grade. It still has like that big of an impact on me. This is another really sad book. And this is another book that's been banned. And again, it's been banned simply because a character dies. Now, I think this one is banned a little bit more on the reasons of why she died. This is the first exposure to suicide that I ever had. And I didn't really understand it at the time, but I think this book illustrates it perfectly. And this is another book that I think everybody should read. The movie is also very well done, has Anna Sophia Robb and Josh Hutcherson when they were really, really young. So Bridge to Terabithia is another A tier, everybody should read it book for me. And again, it's a banned book, so I own this one. I don't intend to ever get rid of it because I truly believe in owning like all the banned books because I'm just very anti-ban book banning. Okay, moving on. Sarah Dessen's This Lullaby. Now, I just talked about Someone Like You over here on the last slide, and this one is also very good. What I like about this one is this one and Just Listen, the characters in them intertwine, and the characters in this one show up again in Just Listen, and I really like that she did that. But overall, I have to put this one in B tier. It's good. It is like, it's up there in the favorites of Sarah Dessen's, but it doesn't stand out like Someone Like You. And when we talk about top 10 favorite books of all time or top 10 books that I would recommend to people, this one just does not quite get in that top 10 spot. So, but it's still very good. I would recommend. The Click. Another series that I read all the way through in 7th and 8th grade and just absolutely was like addicted to was The Click. Now, say what you will, these books may be garbage. Like they are not great. Like they're not great literary works. However, as a 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grader who kind of was always on the fringe. Like I wasn't the outcast, but I was definitely not popular. And there were times when I felt like the outcast and couldn't really like, I was always just kind of weaseled out of the cool kids and the pretty committee. Like I lived vicariously through these books. And like when my sister and I would pretend and like role playing games, like we embodied these characters. And for that reason, I feel like I have to put it in A tier, which is crazy to me that book gets A tier. However, I loved these books so much and I thought they were funny. I thought they were like, I loved the fashion in them. I loved like this idea of going to a private school and like dressing really nice. And these girls in these books had gobs of money that they didn't even know what to do with. And I loved that fantasy of like living the rich kid life when I definitely, like, don't get me wrong, I was blessed growing up, but I was by no means like living outside my means and like wearing designer clothes. No, like these girls were wearing like Ralph Lauren, Polo, Marc Jacobs, DKNY, like designer stuff to school. I was wearing like Walmart, Target, Kohl's, JCPenney. Okay. So like I was not by any means like impoverished, but I also was not at the level of Massey Block and Friends. But these books were so pivotal to me and I loved every single one of them. Like as soon as the new one came to the library, I was eating it up. I have to put this in A tier. I have to. Like this defined my reading in middle school. That's enough about the click. And yes, there are like gobs of these books. There's at least 10 in the original series, and then there was a spin-off called The Alphas. And then there was a series of like little short novels, like novellas, of each girl, Claire, Massey, Kirsten, Dylan, and Alicia. They were like short novellas about their summer, the summer in between 7th and 8th grade. So like there's 4 or 5 books that take place over 7th grade, and then there's another 4 or 5 that take place over 8th grade. There were the novellas that took place over the summer, and then the alphas are supposed to be high school. I never read the alphas. It's supposed to be like Massey and her new school, and I never read those. I just was like, the click was enough for me. I love the Burberry plaid covers. Like, I could go on and on about so much of these books, and I still vividly remember pieces of these books. So yeah, it has to go in A tier. It has to. The original click book, that's what started it all, has to go in A tier. We are up to 7 out of 10, and we might get to the point where the click moves out, because I do have some other ones left that are definitely up there. So let's see. Let's keep going. Okay, 5 Feet Apart. I ironically read this book either right before or during COVID, and it is a medical drama book, so kind of along the same lines of The Fault in Our Stars, though, and for that reason, I have to put it in B tier. Now, I will say, they did make a movie about this starring Cole Sprouse. That's why I read the book, because I wanted to watch the movie. I read the book super fast. It did make me cry, but it is very, very similar to The Fault in Our Stars. So if you liked The Fault in Our Stars, I would say read 5 Feet Apart. Very, very similar kind of storyline, but still good, like good in its own right. And that's why I said, like, it still is a 5-star book. It's just not in the top tier. Like, I would recommend The Fault in Our Stars before I recommended 5 Feet Apart, and since they are so similar, that's kind of where it gets me. Okay, Turtles All the Way Down. This one I'm gonna put in between A and B. It might end up being A tier, but it also might get squeaked out to B tier. This book was very hard to get into, but once I got into it, I was like enamored by it. This book does a really good job at describing what anxiety feels like and what OCD feels like to a person who has anxiety and OCD. He really did a good job with like describing what's going on in the brain. And for that reason, that's why I gave it 5 stars. I don't remember anything else about the book, so maybe for that reason, it needs to just comfortably go in B. I would say this is a really great book. Again, it's John Green, and Fault in Our Stars and Turtles All the Way Down. Well, Fault in Our Stars, Turtles All the Way Down, and Looking for Alaska are his best 3, in my opinion. And like I said, it's not that it's not good. I just don't really remember it. And I didn't read it that long ago. So the main part I remember about it is that it's about a girl with anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder, and it kind of just narrates what's going on in her head. Then we have To All the Boys I Loved Before. This is the original in the To All the Boys series. This one also goes in B tier. A great book, rom-com-y, with a little bit of drama. It just doesn't fit into the top 10. Now, that being said, I did. Okay, I was going to say, I need to put P.S. I Still Love You in C tier, because I don't remember anything about that book. I definitely remember most of this one. And so it can comfortably go in B tier. Next, we have A Whole New World. This is another Twisted Tale book. I think it also has to go in B tier. Really good. I love Aladdin. It's my favorite, but I don't think it was like good enough to go into the top 10. It was good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the alternate perspective. But there were some things that I didn't like about it. But overall, I did give it a 5-star. This is another one, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. This is a book that I recommend to everybody when they're looking for book recommendations. This is by Mark Haddon. And actually, I was gifted this book by a mentor teacher. I'm going to move you right there. And she bought it for me and said that I would really like it. And originally, when I first read it, I had a really hard time getting into it. And I put it down, and right before I was getting ready to get rid of it, I picked it up and I tried to read it again. And as an adult, I got way more out of it, and I was able to make it through it. And it is one of the best. It is in a top 10 book for me. This book follows a man with autism, and it just really describes his journey. And similar to Turtles All the Way Down, like, you get to hear his like inner monologue and his narrative of like what he's thinking, what he's seeing, how he's processing his environment. And it's really, really interesting to see how he navigates that, and like the people who he meets along the way. Like, it's very, very good. I don't really know how else to describe it other than you just got to pick it up and read it for yourself. The only thing that I don't like about this book is it was written, like, Mark Haddon is English, and so some of the slang and things are like traditional British language. And so, like, take that as you will. Okay, now we have this 13 Reasons Why. Honestly, I feel like 13 Reasons Why also has to go in the A tier, but also it might, I don't know. Okay, let's just talk about it and then I'll decide. 13 Reasons Why is a young adult novel by Jay Asher. There was a Netflix series which had 3 seasons. All of which were very good. Jason was my favorite character in the series, but the book season 1 of 13 Reasons Why on Netflix follows the book written by Jay Asher, and the main character is Clay Baker, and then Hannah, and without spoiling it, because most people by this point know what 13 Reasons Why is about, and we're kind of in this, like, there's a generational, I guess, slang term that's like, oh, you'll be my 13th reason or something like that, I heard from my young sister-in-law. So Hannah commits suicide, but she leaves behind a series of cassette tapes. Each, like, each side is about a different person. It's like these letters as to why they contributed to her suicide. Very dark, very challenging, very tense. And then they made a Netflix series about it. But I do think that the book is well done. I think it shows an interesting perspective on suicide. I think Clay's kind of guilt that he feels and his need for, I don't want to say revenge, because that's not the, like, justification, and like, going around his righting of wrongs, I guess we could say, is pretty, I think would be a pretty expected response. Now, obviously, 13 Reasons Why got a lot of flack because, especially with the Netflix show, due to some graphic scenes, graphic imagery, things like that. And they definitely did some creative liberties with the storyline and the characters that were mentioned. But, to each their own. You know what? I think I have to put this in B. I don't think it's in the top 10 that I've ever read. I think it's just really, really good. But I did think of 2 other ones that are going to fill the spots for now as of 2024. And I don't have pictures of them, but let's finish up what we had. This is Sarah Dessen's The Rest of the Story. This one honestly has to go in C, because I don't really remember. Well, I remember it, but I doubt I would give it 5 stars today. Like, I think if I read this book today and I reread it, I would probably only give it 4 stars. There were some good things in there, but also, like, not enough to give it 5. And I read this lullaby way before the rest of the story. And I think for me, the rest of the story got 5 stars because I had waited so long for Sarah Dessen to release another novel that I was like, oh yes, I was just on this high of like, yay, Sarah Dessen released a new book. But it was not as good as this lullaby. Like, now looking back, I'm like, this lullaby, I still remember the plot of that one. And then someone like you, I still remember the plot of that one from when I was literally 13. So, I don't think it measures up. So we're just going to put that one in C tier, but it is a good book. I would not have given it 5 stars. if I read it today. Now, the two other books that I think would like wrap up my top 10 would be The Mouse and the Motorcycle, which I already told you guys about. And then it would be The Reasons Why I Jump. And I'm going to look up the author of that for you because it is very similar to The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. I read this book in college, and the reason why I jump. It is The Reason Why I Jump, the inner voice of a 13-year-old boy with autism. It is a very small book, originally published in 2007. Author is Naoki, I'm going to really mess up this name, Naoki Higashida. And I can show you guys on camera here what it looks like. And I read this book in college. I don't actually own it. I borrowed it from a friend, and I did recommend it to my mom. And for those of you who don't know, my younger sister, who's now 16, does have autism, and it's just an interesting insight. And that's probably why I really like the Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime as well. I love anything that has a storyline around a character with a developmental disability or a difference of some kind. And I just really like reading from their perspective. It just gives me an insight. And I believe the story behind this book is the book was he typed it out, used some sort of voice activated communication device to type it. And then his mom or dad helped kind of get it published and all of that. But that would probably, it's not a book that I don't remember every single reason or every single moment of it. I just it still sticks out to me as a book that really was impactful when I read it. But that's it. There's the top 10. And yes, The Click still made it in A tier. Call me what you say I'm basic, whatever. I don't care. I love those books, and you like what you like. And all the books in the A tier, I would recommend to other people for whatever reason. And still a lot of great titles we're going to just leave this one here in B. Still a lot of great titles in the B tier as well. And I know as I keep on reading, I know more 5-star books will come about, and I'll have to kind of figure out where they fit into this ranking. But I think now as an adult, and since I am reading a lot of books every year now, I do have to be a little bit more careful on what books truly get that 5-star rating. And as of this year, the only book that I've only had 2 books that have gotten the 5-star rating, and one of them was Good Girl, Bad Blood. And the other one, I don't even remember. I don't have my bookmark in front of me to see. Let's see. Because obviously I didn't put it in my, I didn't put it in this, oh, I'm glad my mom died. How could I forget? I literally forgot to put that one even in here. Oh, I'm glad my mom died definitely is A tier. So it would probably go, I'm glad I remembered that. I'm glad my mom died would definitely go here in A tier. And the Reasons Why I Jump would be here in B tier because it just would get, but I'm Glad My Mom Died is 100% a 5-star book. And it again is a nonfiction title. So it would definitely go in A tier. So I'm glad that I remembered that. I'm glad that I looked at that because it definitely deserves a spot here in my 5-star books ranked. And like I said, it would definitely end up in A tier. And if you're wanting a full review on that, it is here on the channel. I also have a full review of Verity, a full review of Real Food for Pregnancy, a full review of Never Cried Wolf, a full review of Fake It Till You Make It, and a full review of, let's see what else, the A Whole New World, the Conceal Don't Feel, and I believe that's it. Because I think everything else was read prior to starting this channel. So I think we finally reached the end. That is my top 10. That's the ranking. All the books that I have currently, like as of this day and time, have read and ranked 5 stars have now been ranked. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, check out the description for my fellow content creator who gave me the idea for this video. Thank you for your inspiration, and thank you all so much for being here. If you are new, make sure you hit that red button and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you liked this video, and make sure you go check out all of my reviews of all of these works already here in my channel. And stay tuned because I will be uploading more Swiftie content coming this week, probably 2 new videos with my special guest JC, so make sure you check those out as well. And until next time, guys, happy Memorial Day. Happy last week of school if you're a teacher and you're still in school. Happy almost summer. Happy summer break, and I will see you guys in the next video.